As you guys know, thank you, Jim, if you did that, appreciate it. So as many of you know, we did this member services survey back in the spring, and we kept it open. And at the very sort of 11th hour, so to speak, we asked our chapter folks, you guys, to try to help us out with getting some additional respondents. We had a statistically valid sample already, but we thought the more we could get, the better. And I do want to thank you all. You responded tremendously. And I'll kind of go through that and explain what I mean a little bit. We had a total of 178 responses, and about 70 of those were as a result of our asking our chapter people to chip in and help. And taking a look, you'll see that actually the Maryland group, and I want to thank you guys very much for this, actually has 63 respondents, which was by far the greatest chapter participation that we had, followed by Philadelphia, and then our members at large. If you look at it on a state basis, not surprisingly, Maryland had the highest response. There were 60 people who replied from the state of Maryland. And then between New Jersey and Pennsylvania, that's our Philadelphia chapter, we had a bunch of folks from there, and then the rest kind of are fairly evenly spread out as we go down the group. One of the things that I thought was really telling was the age distribution of the respondents. This is the what it looks like in graphical form, but more importantly, to look at the percentages, almost 90% of our respondents were 50 or older. And someone brought up the fact that transplant recipients tend to skew older, and that is definitely true, but not to the degree that our respondents did here. So I think this kind of indicates one challenge that TRIO has everywhere, and that is trying to find ways to involve, on a relatively speaking basis, younger individuals. We have a very old organization. We have a very old demographic, and I think it's really important if we can kind of think about ways that we might possibly involve some of the younger people as we move forward. In terms of the status of people, 80% were recipients. The other categories were fairly even split. So we are talking primarily about recipients when we go through this information. So a little bit of a surprise to me, our biggest respondent group were liver recipients. I just had assumed, as I think most people would, that because there are so many more kidney transplants, you would expect that to be the highest group. But actually, liver recipients were about, whoops, excuse me, let me back up here. Liver recipients were, pushing 40%. Kidneys were around 35%. And then we had heart, lung, and going down from there. So very good showing from the liver folks. Our age breakout for how long have you been with the transplant has a nexus of, the 2 to 15 group. And it wasn't tremendously high there. You'll see that, the 2 to 10 years is approximately half of the people, and then it's kind of spread out as we go forward here. So, interesting response across the board, I think. The question on how long have you been a member of TRIO was fairly even. We had perhaps if we had broken up the age groups in slightly different ways, we might have seen a peak in this, but the way we asked it, it was fairly uniform across the board, about 20% more or less in each of the age groups that we asked for. We asked people how active they were currently as a member of TRIO, and then we asked how active had they been in the past. It was just an attempt to see if there was any difference in that. And by and large, I think it's probably easier to use the numbers here. 2/3, maybe even a little bit more of our respondents were not terribly active in national or the chapters. So, and when you look at the next question on how active have you been in the past, the response is kind of similar. In fact, so similar that when you look at the two groups together, you can see very little difference between the current and past. So I think that kind of probably means that how their involvement has been over the years isn't really very significant in terms of how they answer the questions. And guys, feel free to interrupt anytime. I can't really see you, but if you have a question or a comment, just jump right in because we'll hear you. So that's kind of the demographic piece of this. Now, getting into the actual survey part of it, this was how we asked the questions. This is just two of the programs that we asked people for their opinions on. And it's important, I think, to kind of note that the slider scale that we use starts in the middle, which actually is has a numerical value of 5. This becomes significant in a minute. And I'll explain why. What I did is I took each of the programs that we asked about and I ranked them by how valuable people thought they were from lowest to highest. But the important thing is the way SurveyMonkey works, you'll note that there's a surprisingly large number of people who skipped answering this question. Well, it turns out I actually spoke with SurveyMonkey about this. They didn't actually skip answering the question. They just left the slider in the middle. They didn't move it one way or the other. So unfortunately, that counts as a skip. So the people who you see represented in the green bar are people who either moved the slider to the left or moved it to the right. Now, there is a more valid way to look at this, which I'll get to at the end, but just so we can kind of go through this, the scholarship program that we do received a mark of just over about 6 3/4. So the good news is that every single one of our programs was very positively thought of. None of the programs were thought of as less than the middle, so to speak. And the lowest ranked one was actually the scholarship program by the people who actually moved the slider. So it came in at about 6 3/4. The printed materials that we do was a little bit higher, around 6.8, something like that. The United Airlines support program that we do was pushing 7. Our social media work was coming in at around 7 1/4. The presentation library that we do was pushing 7 1/2. Our chapter program, which includes our members at large and the activity that we do for chapters, was well into 7 1/2. And then the national conferences and training and educational webinars received a fairly high score of 7 3/4, which I found interesting because we haven't really been doing this not doing it in any appreciable way. So apparently our members think that there's value in this, even though we're not actually, actively doing it now. So maybe there's a lesson to be learned there. The next ranked question was on our website, and it was about 7 3/4. The e-newsletter came in this scale at about 7.8, something like that. And the PTC program was again equally at 7.8. And our public policy program was just a little bit over 8. Public policy is always highly regarded by organizations, especially like TRIO, and rightly so, because it's a very valid thing that we do. And then the highest ranked one was our representation on other organizations, which was at 8 1/4. Now that's interesting, but I think it's probably better and more realistic and more helpful to look at the point rankings of the services. You'll see a little bit of a difference here when you look. These actually took the numbers and actually counted that middle point of 5. So for people who didn't move the needle, that was counted in here. And you'll see that the order actually gets scrambled up a little bit. our scholarship program went up a little bit. The conference dropped a little bit, and our top three were our e-newsletter with 1,136 points, our website, and then our representation on other organizations. And then the learning that we try to do as outreach, and followed by public policy. So again, I think this is probably the best way of looking at it. And I think, you know, when all is said and done, this is kind of how we should be looking at the ranking of our services by our members. So any thoughts or questions or comments from anyone?
Lorinda from Trio, Oklahoma. You know, I think that we're going to see an increase in the population in their 30s, because I'm seeing a lot of people come in pre-transplant and post-transplant in their late 20s, early 30s, just rapid. And that's from the pandemic, from non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and fatty liver disease. So I just want to put that out there.
Lorinda, that's a good point that I think other chapters who are looking for ways of attracting members can also benefit. The majority of your work as a new chapter has been offering yourselves as a support group to the hospital, which gives you a great synergistic relationship with the hospital, much like Trio Maryland working with their hospitals there has had such a strong supportive relationship there. And so, yeah, the younger people are where we need to get some more people coming in. And your support group is catching them early and showing them the benefit of Trio. So that's a best practice, if I would, going forward for other chapters to consider.
We're actually going to start another caregiver finally meeting. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do, is be that support.
Gary?
Yeah.
One of the things I'm stuck on is the Trio representation, specifically how are interacting with NKF and ALF is apparently seen as something very good by the people who took the survey. And I'm not exactly sure what we're doing, but would like to be educated a little bit more on this.
We work with them individually. We don't go through Trio.
Yes, so we are represented on several organizations.
They wanted us to take over the liver. We got outvoted by their board because they don't have anybody here in Denver.
That was David Hall talking up there in Seattle.
Hi, I'm sorry. I should have thought I was muted.
No, you were talking out loud, David. We heard you.
Hi, David.
Hello.
So Jim, you know, you may be able to, you probably have the best possible handle on this, but we do actually have we do what we can in terms of external outreach to other organizations. And actually we're often, I shouldn't say often, we are occasionally approached about joining coalitions, which sometimes we have, sometimes we haven't. But our work with UNOS, of course, is important at the OPTN. We've got several different ways that we're represented on that. Jim, do you have any other examples of that?
Not really. We've got names associated with the major outside organizations, but there's very little real relationship going on there, except what you just mentioned. We have had members on the UNOS board, and we have them on the committees. And so that's the strongest one we have. The individual chapters have relationships often with their OPOs, which is another good, strong place to both keep Trio in the forefront of the patient community, but also it shows a way that Trio can support the OPOs also. So not as much as we'd like to, although just yesterday, one of the pharmaceuticals reached out and said, do you have a corporate membership type environment, which we don't. Yet I've been looking for ways to develop some other way of relating to other organizations. And we've sort of settled on the idea of a coalition as opposed to formally membership. But we have set a meeting with that pharmaceutical to find out what's going on as far as corporate memberships with sister type organizations, to see what they are doing, what the benefits are out of that, and see if it's something we should be looking at. But all of that falls into a larger subject matter, which the services with the survey really is meant to support also, and that is, where are the strengths of the services we do offer today? And secondly, and this is a separate subject, so I don't want to get it off target yet, but we'll come to it, and that is asking you, what kind of things can TRIO do, and especially TRIO National, by way of improving or increasing or expanding services to the patient community that would give TRIO the recognition and also the attractiveness to get more people coming to join your chapters. We're very fortunate right now, and you probably saw in the minutes you received from our board meeting recently, that financially we've been in good shape now for the past 3 years. And while I'm not looking to spend that money just for the sake of spending it, that's not what I'm doing, but I am challenging our board, and I pass that challenge on to each of you also, to say, how can we invest that money in terms of support of the patient community? And so look around, brainstorm it, and we'll talk a little bit about it later on, because I don't want to take this away from Gary here right now. But what kinds of things can you come up with that we can do? The same thing is happening in the challenge I have, at least with our own chapter, and I know there are other chapters that are financially very strong. And as I'm challenged our board, we're not meant to have a big bank account. That's not our purpose. We're a nonprofit. You take that money and you turn it into service. And so we have services that are working well, but what other things could we be doing now that the excuse of, well, we don't have the money to do it, it's gone away. And so it's a challenge we're facing at the national level, and we share that with you, and open to ideas. And so, Gary, that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts or comments on the member services survey?
Let me ask a question of those of you here. The suggestions been made. We did a survey like this around 2010. And so this past year, when Gary and I were thinking about it, we realized it's been 10 years. Well, maybe we should have a decade survey. That's what we did. And the question now is, is this worth doing every year, or maybe every other year, or more frequently than once every 10 years, to focus on something specific, but in general, to get a pulse of the membership. And again, the response was very positive, and I compliment certainly TRIO Maryland. You've got a large membership, and you had a large turnout with 60 people. We have a much smaller chapter here in Philadelphia, and I'm pleased to see we got 28 responses out of that small group. And so last time we did this, we had, I think about 90% of the chapters had no representation at all. And so the appeal and having the chapter council meetings and getting that message out there really has made a difference. And I give compliments to Gary for following through on all that. So should we have that survey done more frequently? Is there a value to that? When you filled it out, was it reasonable in length, or would you find it to be ornery to have to do that every year? Do you think it would increase the value to you as an organization or you as an individual? Anybody?
Lorinda, I think that, it would do good for the chapters to have their own survey and then do a combination of it at the national level of what the chapters look like. And that way you get an overall just from the chapter, not having an overall for the national, but just at a chapter, do a survey monkey, and then see what happens. Because you may come up with different things because people may answer more. I mean, Marty, I don't know if Marty paid off his members to do it, but he did a great job. So I don't know. That's just a thought.
Thank you. It was my inspiring face.
I actually thought 60 was low for us, so thank you. But I think people personally are tired of doing surveys. I get surveys from hospitals and things every week. And, I think it's upsetting that so many people didn't move the bar and so many of those later questions about some of the things that Trio National offers. Did they weren't interested? They didn't have an opinion? I mean, maybe there should have been an option, not aware of this program, and didn't have access. I don't know, something else. That was a little disturbing to me, but I'm not the person that probably understands survey results the best. So maybe my thoughts are out of whack.
And I was thinking, what are we going to do with that information? Do you look at the two bottom items and say, let's try to improve these two things? Or, I mean, how do you look at that list then?
To inspire change or a new direction or something? I don't know.
Well, the first thing we're going to do is share it with your chapters through you. And Gary, have we sent those slides out to the chapters yet, or is that a follow-on to this meeting?
Yeah, it would be a follow-up to this meeting.
Okay.
I will send you the PowerPoint slide deck and a PDF of the slides if you would like to share them with your chapter people. So absolutely, we'll do that.
And if anybody's interested, we could, I'm recording this meeting, so we could capture Gary's presentation as a separate item, and you could use that as a presentation, giving his interpretation as opposed to you trying to interpret from your own perspective, and then have your conversation with your chapter about the survey itself. And also, I'd be very interested to know, Michelle, as you said, every time you visit a doctor or you go to the hospital, you get this survey. It's an overkill in that sense. But I'd be interested if you do this, to get some feedback as to people who did not respond to it. Why not? In some cases, the issue is they don't open up their emails. This is a major issue these days. We get so many emails that people aren't opening them up. And it's a challenge to try and find ways to get people engaged in opening them up. But it's a problem that every organization has. And we've been working on it for a couple of years now, trying to learn how to give better subject lines that make people open things up. But we cannot get past, we're doing very good compared to other organizations, but at the same time, you can look at that glass half full or half empty. And I'm pleased that we're getting good results. We're in the 45 to almost 50% range in terms of openings. But I'm saying, well, yeah, what about the other 55%? And so it's a challenge that you at the chapter level, I'm sure, are having the same thing. It's almost a 80-20 rule idea. Well, in this kind of stuff, it's almost like the 66 versus the 33% rule in terms of opening it up. And so it limits what we know about our people. Part of what we were trying to do also is a number of times when we're dealing with, especially grant programs, they're asking about our demographics, how many different people of different type of organs, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't have that information. We don't get that from you, and we don't have a direct survey to collect that even. And so Gary's idea was to make this one anonymous. So you didn't get asked your name or your address or stuff like that, as a way of trying to make it easier for people to say, well, okay, I'm not giving away private information. But the other idea there, picking up on what somebody just said, is maybe we can come up with a couple of things that would be interesting at the national level and suggest that chapters do their own survey. Please include these 5 questions. And then since your chapter is doing the survey, maybe you get a better response. And then you'd have that feedback as a compilation from the chapters. And I bet you, even in that situation, we would have 1/3 of the chapters responding and 2/3 not. And just that's not a complaint. That's just human nature, what's going on out there. And so for those of you who do take this back and do actively engage your chapters, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're preaching to the choir when we're talking about this to you, but to the others, I mean, we're going to talk in just a minute about the ad program where every chapter was offered $1,000 if they put this little ad about a patient app for their phones on the website. I mean, if you are maintaining your website, that's a 2-minute job. If you outsource it, maybe it's costing you a little bit, but you're getting $1,000 back. At this point, and Gary, correct me if you've gotten others since then, out of our 17 chapters, we have 4 who took advantage of that program. Here's $1,000. All you got to do is put this patient education app in front of you, and you get $1,000. And most of the chapters represented here have done that, but the other 13 chapters haven't responded at all. There's $13,000 sitting there waiting. And within a very reasonable time, it's just going to either be returned to our sponsor, or we'll move it into the National Operations Fund. And so for those of you who have asked for that and done it, thank you. Good for you. And for those that haven't, if you haven't done it for a good reason, and if you want to talk to me about it, I'd be glad to help you. Okay. I know some chapters have challenges with their websites, and you really need to have one. That's where people are looking these days. If they run across your TRIO chapter, they're going to go to the website. They're going to look at your Facebook. They come to national, they're going to go to our chapter list and click on it to find out who contact in your chapter. And there is a web page for every chapter on a national website. And that's what it's for. It's a honeypot to bring people to you. And if you look at it, I'll guarantee you that just about every chapter out there, the latest report is 2 or 3 years old, as opposed to a quarterly, here's what we've been doing. And you need to brag about that and show people why they'd want to join your chapter. And so I invite you to follow through on that and give us a report. Go out and look and see what your report says. I looked at one today. It was 2014 is the date in the report, even though it's got a title of 2019, but either way, it's way out of date. And so it doesn't speak well to somebody looking for your chapter. It's a free advertising for you. I'm sorry, Gary, there's a couple of things that just came out of that survey, and I didn't mean to go there with you as much as bring those points out.
No, we wanted to talk about that today anyway. We can bring it up again a little bit later, but you know, surveys, people do get asked to be part of surveys a lot. You're absolutely right. But on the other hand, and I want to again thank the chapter folks who really beat the bushes. Our response rate was about 20%. The number that actually were asked is a little bit hard to measure because we don't know exactly how many chapter people were asked by their chapter leadership to do this. But to have a survey where we are pushing 20% response rate is really, it gives us information that we can, I think, be comfortable with kind of looking at. And the other thing I wanted to say about the survey is, you know, the surprise to me was that all of our programs were positively thought of quite significantly. You know, you would have expected a few of them to be maybe pushed to the bottom or pushed down a little bit, or maybe sitting at around, you know, okay, fine, in the middle somewhere, you know, given, you know, a 5 number. But our people actually, you know, basically when you do the scoring, the least highly thought of program, I'm mixing my words here, was well over 6, which kind of shows that our membership, I think, I take that as a vote of confidence in what we're doing.
The other point I want to make for what Gary's saying is we do look at this analytically. And if you look at the analytics, you could get another 50 responses and the averaging of those responses would smooth out just like we got. And so the analytics would tell you that if you get, for what Gary was talking about, in the 10 to 15% range, you got a statistically valid sample. More people really don't move the needle much more. So we've got something there that has a message for us, and especially since we got up to 20%. But even back then when we had the deadline, Gary came to me and said, you know, should we extend it more? My attitude usually is, no, it's a deadline. But I went along with him and I said, well, Gary, I'm going to tell you, let's extend it. But those that join now aren't going to change that needle much. And as we looked at it, really didn't. So we had a statistical good sample, even with the first deadline that was set. But anyway.
Okay, great. Well, if there aren't any other thoughts or comments, we can kind of move on if that's all right.
Gary, I just wanted to say something, John, at Central Texas. We are having a storm here in Central Texas, so that's why I'm in and out. So if you lose me again, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to keep my Wi-Fi going here. Sorry.
That's okay. What a gentleman to even apologize in advance. I appreciate it. So the next thing that we wanted to kind of report on was the status of our scholarship program, and we have very good news for that. And again, we have our chapters to thank. We are going to be able to award 10 scholarships this year. We received a total of $10,000 from individuals and chapters, and I just wanted to thank Trio Kansas City, Trio Philadelphia, Trio San Francisco, and Trio Maryland for awarding a full $1,000 scholarships for providing funding for that. And actually Trio San Francisco provided $2,000 in memorials for individuals. So there'll be 2 scholarships that can be funded by Trio San Francisco. In addition, I'm sorry, I missed one. Trio Ventura County, the LA chapter, also provided a $1,000 scholarship. We got $500, half of a scholarship from our brand new Oklahoma chapter, which was really appreciated. And the rest of our funding came from individuals. So we were able to raise a total of $9,000 from chapters and individuals, and the Trio National Board committed $1,000 of the Trio national budget to this. So we will be actually awarding 10 scholarships. And we haven't told the winners yet. So if you have people in your chapter that applied, we are going to be sending those letters out over the next couple of days. So that's really good news. And again, I really have to, again, express our appreciation for the support that our chapters provide to that program. It wouldn't really be much of a program at all if it wasn't for the financial support of our chapters. So thanks very much, folks. And I know Elizabeth will be asking all of you again next year, and hopefully we can keep that support coming. This is a great program, and the people that we are able to fund, we're going to fund 10. I think we got 20 some odd applications, and every one of them was certainly fundable. They were from all great candidates, recipients and families of recipients. I think one was a donor who, who are trying to kind of move on forward with their life, and hopefully this funding will be able to make that a little bit easier for them and make it happen. So that's really great. And again, our thanks to everybody.
Gary, one other thing to add to your point, when we look at the analytics on the website, one of the most visited pages we have out there is the scholarship page. So there's certainly strong interest there, and it's a good advertisement for Trio and our service to the community.
I believe it's our #1 page visited, if I'm not mistaken, right, Jim?
Yes. Yep.
So that's great. A lot of people are looking for help. Okay, so we mentioned the chapter $1,000 ad grant project. I want to echo everything that Jim said. This is a very simple way to get $1,000 in your chapter treasury, and if you need help with figuring out a way to make it work, there are people at National, Jim, of course, and others who can help you out with this and make it work out. One chapter told me, well, we don't really have a website. So this would be a perfect opportunity to take the $1,000 and put it into creating a website, and then you'd have a website going down the road. So I hope all of you will consider doing this. It literally is sitting in our bank account waiting to be sent to you. So please look into this and see if you can't figure out a way to make that happen. That would be great. And related to that, I've been reaching out to you folks by email, and I've started calling people. We also need to kind of resolve the situation with where each of you are with your annual filing of your financial reports with the IRS, and whether or not you are doing it as part of National, whether you have your own 501c3 number, or what. It's not really so important what the answer is, but we do need an answer, because when we have a good, solid knowledge base of what all of our chapters are doing, we then are going to have to decide at national exactly what we're going to need to do and who we're going to need to engage in order to provide the proper financial reporting. We've kind of been able to skirt that a little bit in years past because we've been able to kind of get away with the easier, the end filing, which is a very simple thing. But now it's pretty clear that we are going to have to file an actual 990. So that will involve probably some professional help. And we do need to make sure that we want to include the people that need to be included. So, you know, if any of you, you know, if you haven't had a chance to respond yet, I will be calling you in the next couple of weeks. So understand that's why we're calling and what we're trying to accomplish. And then we can kind of move forward with our own plans at national and get the proper reporting done. Any thoughts or questions on our ad grant program or your IRS status or anything?
Really what he's talking about there also is the fact that some chapters have their own 501(c). So they're filing their own IRS tax returns, at least they better be. For those who are not and are using the national 501(c) umbrella, as it were, or parachute, whatever you want to call it, we now realize we have to report those chapters as part of our filing, which we have not been doing. And so Gary needs to know from each chapter, do you have your own or are you dependent on us? And if you're dependent on us, then we have to include it in our list when we file our IRS return. Just to clarify what Barry is saying there. And I'm sure if you look at his email, that was pretty clear, but just for this meeting.
And to be crystal clear, we need to list every chapter, whether you file your own return or not, we still need to list you. But it's two categories. Either we include you financially in our report, or we simply say that you filed separately. So yeah, we're going to need to know that from everybody. Okay, any other questions or comments? Well, I wanted to mention we're starting to plan for 2022, and I wanted to kind of show everybody what our plans are. This is tentative and nobody needs to write this down or anything, but I will share with you. But we've laid out a schedule for these leadership council meetings for 2022. And we've also laid out a schedule for the chapter roundtables, which are more of sort of an open discussion about various topics. And these are tied into the national board meetings. There is a separate tab here which kind of shows the entire schedule for our National Executive Committee and Board of Directors. But the important part here is really just the for you guys is the Leadership Council and the roundtables, which we're going to keep on Wednesdays. That seems to be the best day for everybody. I don't know if that is the case still, but that has been the case in the past. This meeting happens to be on a Tuesday. I'm not really sure why, but for next year, we wanted to try to standardize on Wednesdays, if that's all right with everyone. If people have a problem with Wednesdays for our trio chapter meetings, maybe let me know. This is not set in stone yet. We probably won't actually formally approve it until much later in the year, but I did want to give people a little bit of heads up as to where we were going with our planning on this. Any thoughts or questions on that? No?
Just looking at a couple of the dates,
Yep.
we have our board meeting on the third Wednesday of the month. So I saw a few of those. I mean, we don't have to be on every one of these, but
We want you on every one of them. So if it's a particular Wednesday is a problem, we can do it a different Wednesday. That's he's saying. This is really the draft looking for your feedback. If you have your meetings on the third Wednesday.
third
we can know
Wednesday.
that. And then
that's
maybe
when we
we'll
have them.
All right, we'll take that in consideration. Lorinda, when are your support group meetings?
We're every Thursday.
Thursday. Okay, I remember you had those on a regular basis. And yours are just about weekly, aren't they?
They are weekly. We've
Okay.
had 53 meetings. We're going on 54 this week.
Wow,
Wow.
not bad for a new chapter, huh? All right, so Wednesday is good as long as it's not the third Wednesday. Mike, you had a conflict out in next September or something, didn't you? Oh, your anniversary or something, wasn't it? We can't hear you, Mike. You're not muted, but we're not hearing you.
Okay, now you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm muting it on my headphone. Anyway, the second Wednesday every month I've got a meeting.
Hmm.
But I also have the 22nd of September, which I think was a board meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, Gary, take that into consideration. Maybe we'll modify this draft when we take it before the board and try and work around some of those situations.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and send this as follow-up to this meeting to all of you so you can get a better look at it. And then if you could just let me know if you've got problems or issues, we can try to find maybe a different date, or maybe
Yeah.
Tuesdays work better. I don't know, but Wednesdays seem to work pretty well for this group.
Unless there's other comments on that, I'd like to springboard from that, because when Gary's talking about I'm sorry, what do you call them? I call them webinars, you call them roundtable discussions, I think it was.
Yep.
The schedule is sometime after the council meeting, the chapter council meeting, which follows the national board meeting. We would have what I call a webinar, he's calling it a roundtable, on some topic. You've seen a couple of these topics we've had. A current topic that's come up for the next one of these, which will be scheduled shortly, has been looking at what's the future of our chapters look like in terms of the pandemic, post-pandemic. And what we've come to realize, especially as we're watching other organizations who are trying to do some face-to-face meetings, which are not working out at all at the national level, is we're never going to go back to where we were. That's I don't care if it's in your church or other organization, wherever it is. Public will never return to where we were. So people are saying, well, when we get back to normal, it's never going to be the same normal. We've learned some things, we've improved some things, and there's some good things from the past and some good things we've forced into doing, such as these virtual meetings that have opened up all sorts of opportunities. And so the next topic that's been suggested is that we have that discussion. Some of the chapters can share things that they've done, that they've learned that, hey, we couldn't do it this way, but we did it this way. And this is what's working for us, especially in the virtual world. And so it's meant to be a sharing. At the same time, I'm trying to collect information from other organizations who are having hybrid type combinations of best practices going forward. So as things do free up, the message is don't let the virtual go away. This is offering opportunities for some of your members who can't drive at night. It's also freeing up some chapters that didn't have a good meeting place or an expensive meeting place, for example. The social luncheons are great, but in the evenings, some of our older members have some challenges in terms of driving, in terms of getting out at night, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can have the hybrid idea of having a face-to-face meeting, which also is using Zoom. So you get both worlds, which is bigger and better than just the one world we had before. And so that's where this is going in this next webinar roundtable discussion. And we're open to other ideas. I'm always going to ask at these council meetings, what topics would you like to have in discussion at these roundtable discussions? What's important to your chapter? Yes, Steve.
I think we need something, also judging by Gary's poll results, something for everyone on the status of public policy, where we're moving, what are the things that are tying up new concerns in transplantation, all the stuff regarding geographic location. Within the last 2 weeks, I've met 3 people who have been accepted for transplant at UCSF, but told it's going to take 9 years, it's going to take 6 years to get your liver, or 9 years for a kidney. So they went down south, one to Osher in New Orleans, another one to Mayo in Jacksonville. Both of them got organs within a matter of weeks, although it entailed having to move to that location. I think this is a excellent opportunity for us to boost our exposure. And I think we ought to take advantage of it.
Okay, be a good topic. And certainly we've seen that in different parts of the country. And that's why even the OPTN/UNOS is changing their allocation rules so that it's not just local geographic based and opening it up to the whole country, especially with advances in organ preservation, for example.
Yeah.
And so Jacksonville down in Texas, down in Florida is really become a mecca to get a liver. Somehow they're getting livers allocated and beating out the other parts of the country.
People ought to be aware of this.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting to see how we do that without offending other transplant centers by advocating for one center or another, as much as just reporting the facts.
Yeah, good point.
Advice. That's certainly what we don't want to do. But anyway, good topic, Steve. And when you say advocacy, my first thought was our public policy committee, which does have coalitions that are fighting for our issues. And just to point, every one of our monthly e-news has a link to the monthly publication of the public policy committee activity that Lorenda is on, for example. And so they do an extensive report, and it's too big to put in the e-news. So there's a highlight in the e-news and a link to their full report on the website. Make sure if you're looking for advocacy issues, it's there. And if you have something going on locally that you think would be of interest, Lorenda, Roger Goodacre, that whole team is doing an amazing job representing us, and at the same time pass that information back, and especially when there's an opportunity for our members to speak up and reach out and add the patient voice to some of these issues. Lorenda, did you want to add anything to that conversation?
I do. So I just went through the GLI A3 Academy, and it's a 3-day advocacy. They teach you stuff. They had a great platform that they used. It was virtual, and it's one of the best ones I have seen to date. And what it taught was how to tell your story. There was different pieces in there and self-learning that you could go to, and but it was how to tell your story. And most of our members want to tell their story, but they don't know how to tell it to someone or how to shorten it up and to get their point that they want across, because a lot of people want to advocate and they want to say what's important to them. But if they don't know how to do that, you know, they did provide us a great information in regards to, you know, points. They actually gave us a glossary of liver terms, which was, you know, it's 80 pages of things that they did, and it was absolutely outstanding. And they asked me to be on GLI Live with them, even though it was pre-recorded because I was having a biopsy. I was still on their GLI Live. So, and they talked about Trio and things like that. So I think, you know, as a liver recipient, I do try to work with ALF. I try to work with GLI, because GLI, they don't care if you're just with them. They want you to be an advocate, you know, out in the public. So, you know, if we can teach our members to tell their story, I think that that would be huge, and maybe highlight some. I mean, we have a guy that just had a transplant. He came to our meeting the day after his liver transplant from his ICU bed. And I got to tell you, everyone was on there going, wow, because we had 20 people on there. And a guy calling in from ICU just to say, hey, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you guys. And so that's where I think our members will come from too, is the pre-side of it.
Miranda, just pick up on what you just said. We're looking for new services. Trio certainly would be a good source of putting together a workshop on how to promote organ donation through sharing your story, and make that a workshop that we conduct several times a year, and also would offer it as an outline that individual chapters could hold if they had in-person meetings, for example. So I pick up on that and look at something different. Now, would we be competing with something that you just said? I don't recognize GLI, for example. What's GLI?
So GLI is Global Liver Institute. Donna Cryer.
Okay, right.
Out of, but my thought process is it not just members telling their story, but being able to talk to the media, because some of our transplant centers don't know about TRIO if they're locally. That members may not have been able to communicate what they're doing, or on Donate Life Month or whatever month it is, that they're able to tell their story to media.
Well, I know I've been frustrated because we as a transplant organization should be doing more in terms of patient advocacy or promoting organ donation. And we've got a committee, they've never met, we've never done anything in that area. It certainly matches up with our mission. And so I think we should look into this and see if we can make something out of this that could help people not just tell their story, but you're right. There's the facts of transplantation that need to be integrated to that, supported with your story, and how to talk to the media, how to talk to a face-to-face audience. And maybe it's different when you're talking using virtual media too. So maybe our committee could come together and outline what that is, come back to chapter council, for example, and share what we're coming up with, get your ideas built into it, and come up with a resource, a patient education resource that we could offer speakers. Good ideas. Steve, you had your hand up first.
I took care of it already.
Okay, David, what?
Quick addition to what you're saying and to Lorenda's accomplishments. We, for the last 7 years, have been helping patients and other advocates share their story when we speak before the different legislatures here in Oregon and Washington and in DC on occasion. Because one of the resources we have, and everyone has there, is reach out to your local, I'm talking Marty back in a long time ago in the day, bringing in Toastmasters, because that's what we do. And I have a class I teach the youth during the weekend about public speaking. Don't judge it, by the way, by how I'm speaking now. So do as I do, not how I sound. But we also partnering with the University of Washington video production. I've got about 30 or 40 patient stories to record. And we're putting together, instead of just doing a simple Zoom, where we want to put together a quality presentation. So we're working with their university TV production group to produce it. So I would love to serve on the committee that is going to put together a program to do that. And one of the advantages we have, by the way, it's free. We have the talent, the materials are free, and it could be done on a regular basis, and also would be a great membership drive tool.
Okay, so, David, thank you for that thought and offer. Patty, you had your hand up?
Yes. Hang on, I'm a little behind here. What I was going to say is I think a lot of people that have been out, in this world for a while, we used to get out quite a bit. I used to do probably 3, sometimes 4 events with Donor Network West, but since pandemic, nobody gets out, nobody socializes anymore, nobody gets together anymore. So that's a really big factor. But I do find that I have been able to do a lot of outreach just through the different transplant blogs like that show up on Facebook or on different, transplant sites. And there are so many people with so many questions that are basic. It'd be nice. I think what I'm going to start doing is just putting the TRIO website in along with that periodically in the different groups, because even though I'm a liver transplant, which by the way, yesterday was my 6-year anniversary.
Yay. Congrats.
Dang. So yeah, I'm doing great. But yeah, I think, if all of us, if we do respond or participate in any of those blogs that come on, or, just little different groups on Facebook that come up, I think it might be a really good way to, and I've referred several people, but maybe if we make a concerted effort to, when you answer or respond to somebody's question, say, by the way, there's some great information on the TRIO website, and there may be a local group, but you can always refer to the national group. And just did that as a concerted effort with our group,
Okay. David?
Very quick, whoops.
Jackie?
Hold on. Very quick, I just want to add, we've added 3 weeks ago a medical transplant, I say medical doctor, transplant surgeon, willing to be our anonymous Q&A person. So I would encourage people not only give us more value nationally, but individual chapters. And we're putting it together because of all the questions that Patty pointed out, it's real questions by a real qualified surgeon who has to do it currently anonymously respond. So that's what we're also working on as well. So I would encourage everybody to reach out to their transplant centers and see who's willing to do that.
And don't forget, we do have a transplant surgeon on our board that does the same thing at the national level for us.
And would they be willing to do that? So,
yep. Jackie, you had your hand up.
Hi, I'm Jackie from Akron Canton Trio. And I saw that we were represented, even though we only have 3 members at the moment. So would it be 75%? Just saying. We've had so many challenges, not just the pandemic, but the person that did our website stuff, he died. The person that had our Facebook group, he died. Our chapter president died, so on and so forth. Our founder, the person who founded. So we've had a really tough year. And we're trying to find our way back. And we had a couple of Zoom meetings, but it was just because none of us that are left were really technology oriented. So that's been really hard, but we're trying. So we met at a TGI Fridays for our first kind of real meeting tonight, earlier. And in setting up that meeting, we got some really strong responses from people that would be willing to come to meet us there next time. So we're kind of excited about that.
Good.
I think, I feel good about the fact that we're going to come back. Also, I used to do Toastmasters years ago, and it's an awesome program. It teaches you not to say us and us, but it teaches you how to tell your story, have a good opening, have 3 points, have a good closing. And I think people really struggle public speaking. Even if the public is only 1 or 2 people and you're telling your story, that is hard to do. And I think that's awesome. But Life Bank, who I have spoken over the years, I spoke for them multiple times. They go into schools, they go into nursing programs, they go all over. But Life Bank has a certified educator program, which is really good at how to tell your story. But I haven't been in touch with Life Bank for years now.
Jackie, 2 things based on what you said. One thing you're highlighting is something every chapter needs to know. You can't put all your eggs in any one individual for any one service, such as maintaining a website. It's so easy to fall into that trap because somebody wants to do it, they take it over, and nobody else has the password or the knowledge to do that. So you need to build up a backup, both to your officers level and also those skill levels.
Our Facebook page is dead in the water because the person that started it is passed away, and he was the only administrator.
Right, and that's the challenge.
Different person that did our website.
Yeah.
So yes, you should have more than 1 administrator on any one of those things. Absolutely.
The other important point you just made was our OPOs have a lot of resources, especially when it comes to educating people on how to convey this message and promote organ donation. And so you as a chapter don't have to reinvent that wheel. You welcome your people to be trained, and then you become part of their volunteer organization to speak, as you suggested, Jackie. So that's a strong, if I look at best practices for chapters, that's a best practice. And that gives you the opportunity also to expose TRIO to another audience where members can come from. So the third point I would make is what you're going through there is very common. I look at chapters that are starting out like Oklahoma, there's a big energy burst there, there's new people, there's passion. Then they sort of settle out for years to come. And depending upon how strong the individual leader is, which is good. But if there's no backup to that leader at some point in time, I can go through about 5 chapters where this has happened. That leader passes away or gets sick and can't keep up with it anymore. And all of a sudden the chapter goes into the valley, as I call it. And it takes people like yourself to hang in there and finally say, hey, we got to do something to get back to where we were. And so what you're going through is normal. And I give you that as a ray of hope. We did it in Philadelphia. We were inactive for a couple of years, even though we had people out there interested, just because the leadership wasn't there. And we're back strong. And every chapter I look at, I can point to every chapter, say at some point in time in their history, they go through that. And it's up to individuals like yourself to hang in there and keep the faith and get it going again. So good luck to you in doing that. You've made some good points there, Jackie. Thank you.
Wait, one more thing about what David said. You're involving people that do videography, like from a college or students or something. Sorry. I
David,
can't.
you're muted.
You're muted, David. If that's what you're talking about, that sounds like an excellent opportunity to like kind of get our message in a different group, like at colleges or students or something, having them be involved with doing a video project.
Absolutely. And it doesn't, and depending how close you are to your local universities,
We
you
have,
go
we have
just
quite a
simply
few.
to the, go ahead.
I said, we have quite a few universities in the Akron-Canton area.
I heard that, yes. And so they are, for the most part, open and willing to help you. Now, part of that is depending on the school, there may be a fee attached to it. But that is just another opportunity to work with them and raise some money. It's not a deal killer. I just had to put that out as well.
Well, the other thing I would add to that, David, is most of those schools are looking for projects like this to give their students practical experience with what they're teaching them. So where I've seen it, they've never had a fee associated with it.
Right.
But the other thing I would caution everybody on, there is a price to perfection. And sometimes trying to be professional about everything, you don't get it done at all. As opposed to the technology that's out there for the amateur today is so good. I mean, even these Zoom meetings, you don't have to get a special camera. You can see what's happening in these meetings and you just push the record button and you've got the whole thing captured in such a way. I would challenge you to go to our post-transplant cancer project website, triowebptc.org. And the banner, the rotating banner atop, the first one is a new one up there about a patient sharing her story with cancer post-transplant. And I think it's an excellent example of what you can do just with Zoom. I'm not saying not doing what David's talking about, but I'm saying if you don't have that access or if that makes it too hard to do, don't stop. You can do it in a very easy way with a simple camera or now with Zoom. Everybody's got that camera. It's an amazing technology that will give you a classy enough resource to be able to share it effectively.
And 2 other quick things, if I may jump in and add to what Jim is saying. It goes beyond just simply getting help or produce a video, share your story. We are Oklahoma, story, but it goes to the digital media people to help you produce your newsletters, to help you produce other materials, brochures and other print materials. We're working with the different digital media people here to do our update for our brochure. And they want to do it. I tell them, and it's also a good way to attract your members as well. But it's what we lack in paying you, we can promise you full distribution and building a portfolio, and they want to do it.
Good.
Sounds awesome. Thank you.
Gary, back to you. I'm sorry, I know we're running past the hour, so I'll give it back.
Yeah, no, we're good. Any further thoughts or questions from anyone? We don't want to keep you all too long. We've kind of committed to keeping these to 1 hour, so really appreciate your input and your time today.
Gary, do we have a date for the upcoming roundtable?
We do, and I have to check on the calendar. Might take me a few minutes to find,
All right,
sorry.
never mind. Just put it out as a reminder to everybody so that as
And
we
Jim,
leave this meeting, and for those that aren't here, get them tuned into that on their calendar. Thank you, Gary.
No
I
worries.
got a quick final thing, if I may. When you talk about supporting the other chapters, would it be possible to have a cloud server that each of the new and existing chapters can upload material to? You would go to the national site to download material, but how about being able to upload material? So one, it's a safe place for everybody to have. And number two, as part of that, building a technical SWAT team to be able, I call it a SWAT team, in order to help other chapters that need help in building. You said only 4 people have taken advantage of the offer to put their logos on their sites. Well, our SWAT team can provide the technical help needed. So
David, just
that,
because you're talking, why haven't you asked for $1,000?
because our team, we have 4 web developers rebuilding our site. So we want the $1,000. So, but
Do you have a
our site's
website?
not.
Do you have a
Oh, yes.
website up right this moment?
I took down the existing one and going to put up. We're waiting for them to.
So you don't
finish.
have one up there right now?
Not yet. No.
Okay, that's a good reason not to ask for $1,000. I got it.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
It's
Gary,
almost
back to you.
ready. We're going to be publishing shortly, but we have a lot of material.
If you have anything that you think could be shared like that, you send it to us. We'll send it out to everybody and we'll make it available. But I don't see us building yet another resource that nobody's using. They're not even using this resource we put out there. So I like your idea, but we'll just offer it directly as opposed to creating another technology
Oh,
resource. Okay?
absolutely.
All right, Gary?
Well, that's it for us. Any other additional thoughts? Anything else? Otherwise, I'd like to thank you all. It's a little after time. I'm sorry about that, but look forward to seeing you for the chapter roundtable or the webinar that's coming up at some time. I still can't find, but I'll get it out to you guys as soon as I can. So thanks
Thank you,
very
Gary.
much.
Thank you, Gary.
Have a great night, okay?
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good luck, Lorinda.
Thank you.
Everything